All right, everybody. It looks like everybody who will be joining us is here today. So first off, hello and welcome to everybody. My name is Cecilia Rayburn. I am the Events and Communications Coordinator with the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum. Now that we've given everybody an extra second to settle in, I just want to take a moment to thank and acknowledge everyone in our community who are shifting resources to support the ongoing requirements to ensure health and safety of all of our frontline workers and all Canadians across the country. Without any further delays, I am excited to start today's webinar. Today we are joined by CAF champion member Saskatchewan Polytechnic, who will be sharing tips and strategies for online delivery of apprenticeship training. I'm just going to ask everybody to turn off their mics. I think they've been disabled on our end, but it looks like there's a couple people who can still hear. So if you can please, just for double safety, please mute all of your mics. The Canadian Apprenticeship Forum is a nonprofit organization that connects Canada's apprenticeship community. Participants work collaboratively to support innovative apprenticeship systems and policies with a view of developing a highly skilled, inclusive, and mobile skilled trades workforce. The Canadian Apprenticeship Forum is the only organization that brings together apprenticeship stakeholders from across trades, sectors, and the country to share information and promising practices, identify challenges, and to propose joint solutions. As a national voice for the apprenticeship community, CAF influences apprenticeship strategies through research, discussions, and collaborations. Its research events provide stakeholders with an accurate, unbiased insight into apprenticeship challenges and barriers, as well as showcasing the substantial benefits of hiring and training apprentices. As I mentioned just a second ago, all attendees' mics have been muted to create the best viewing experience for everyone here today. Should you have any questions throughout today's presentation, please use the Q&A field to the right of your screen. Time permitting, we will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the event. I am now happy to welcome Dalton Mervold from Saskatchewan Polytechnic. Dalton is an educator with a specialization in distance and online course design. Using communication tools, he strives to improve the interactions between learners and course facilitators. Dalton, we are so lucky to have you here with us today. Thank you for sharing your expertise with the community. Dalton, it looks like people are having some trouble hearing you. Do you want to check your mic?
There
you go.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thanks for checking.
Well, thank you, Celia, for the kind welcome and the warm welcome from CAF. First of all, I'd like to just let you know that I'm presenting from Territory 6, or Treaty 6 territory in Saskatchewan and homelands of the Métis people. You'll notice I don't do a lot of bulleted points. You'll see a lot of images and illustrations and pictures and photos. If you have any questions or you'd like more information, At the end, I have my information. You're more than welcome to send me an email and I'll reply with anything I have. First of all, over the past 20 or so years, I've worked on online apprenticeship training. One of the things that I've noticed, and I'll present on today quite a bit of, is the types of interactions that happen online. Next one will be, we'll talk about some course design and how to do encourage online engagement. We'll talk a little bit about building community, engaging apprentices, faculties, and others into the learning environment. Talk a little bit about some different learning systems and tools that you can use. And then we'll wrap up at the end, because especially during these times, assessments and exams and things like that, security is a real critical factor. And we're going to talk about how to keep your content safe and how to make sure that the person that's writing the exam is actually the person writing the exam. We're living in a world where change is not an option, especially since this pandemic started. You'll notice it's forced, rapid, and extreme change that we're experiencing. We've had to adapt. Some people say we used to think outside the box. I think nowadays we don't have a box to think outside of. Now we're just out in the wild open, and we need to do something different than what we were doing in the past. Education is no different. Change is just part of the thing. Online education opens some doors. You'll notice in the illustrations, people are now connected, they're sharing information, and with social distancing, online education works very well because you can use some of the online tools that are available to stay connected and yet stay distant. I'm going to talk a little bit about designed interactions. Courses must be designed, or content must be designed to do a few things. It must encourage apprentices or students to interact. It must engage them, so it must have some sort of engagement that they feel connected. And it must create an opportunity for them to learn content, learn new information, and interact with their community. One of the things that's really important when you're designing or building courses, and I found this over the years, is to look at things like essential skills and build those in, just integrate them right into your course content so that it's part of everything you do. While you're working on assignments, you're also encouraging critical thinking. You also encourage reading and numeracy. You're using those essential skills by designing them into the content. So we're going to talk about communications. We're going to talk about use of media, and we're going to talk about sharing and building in a shared environment. I want to talk today about 4 types of interactions. I know it's fairly straightforward and fairly simple, but we often don't think of it this way. There are 4 types of interactions to get the best experience for everybody. And by experience for everybody, I mean not only just the apprentice or the learner. I'm talking about faculty, I'm talking about their community and families, and I'm talking about their work environment. So let's examine the 4 types of interactions that happen and can happen online. You'll notice from the illustration on the left-hand side, when we have classroom settings or we have work settings where we're working in a shop, we can all talk and interact in a face-to-face setting. As soon as you switch to online, you have the opportunity to do exactly the same thing, maybe even more so, because in a classroom where you'll have 12 to 14 students, there's not very often that you'll actually talk to each and every student every day, whereas online, you can have them do discussions, you can have them do interactions, you can have them share time together, and that interaction can also be shared with the other members of the group. Just to show you, I pulled some stuff from our learning management system. I changed the name so that you're not familiar, but if you look, apprentice-to-apprentice discussion or student-to-student discussion, however you want to look at it, is a critical part of their learning environment. That happens in the classroom where they have discussions about content, where they have problems that they need to solve, where they work in groups, may happen in the shop. In an online format, one of the best ways to do it is to create a discussion where you'll ask some questions about content or about processes, and then the students actually, the apprentices actually get to post. And then one of the things we encourage in posting is for them to always leave an open-ended question at the bottom so that it creates that environment where somebody else might ask a question. So then they reply to that, and then that conversation quite often rolls on, and you'll see multiple apprentices go back. They'll even go back to courses that were previous if they come up with an idea and go back and put a posting so that that conversation can happen not only just in the activity you're in, but can happen throughout the course. Faculty also has an opportunity during these to interact with the apprentice, so they get to read the interactions, talk to the apprentices online, and put postings up to give further suggestions or ideas or places to go look for information. One of the little tips for trainers out there or for faculty, if you make a discussion worth something towards their final grade, quite often it encourages them. That's one of the encouraging tools you can use is even if it's worth 5% or 2%, there's something in there for the apprentice to participate just besides the community effort that's happening. It's also the opportunity to gain some marks towards the final exam or towards a final grade in the course. The next one, we all know about these ones because we do these on a regular basis, apprentice to apprentice, apprentice to instructor. What changes is you're not as visible now anymore. Once you're online, you're just a comment in a discussion or something. So you need to have that connection with the apprentice or with the student. One of the things you can do is when you're communicating with them, always put your name. So when you do a communication, just put your first name or your last name, whatever, whoever you don't recognize yourself with your students, and make sure that they know that you're in there and you're watching. Not that you're monitoring, but you're part of the community that they're learning in. That's really important because they see you in the classroom. They don't see you visually online the same. They could, for example, when you start first contact, this is one of the things that we've done for years at Sask Polytech in our online delivery, is to add that personal touch. When the student first enrolls in the program or the first week of a program, or even before they start their course, the instructor will call them and welcome them to the course personally and answer any questions, help them log in if they need assistance. The second thing you'll do, by the way, that's a picture of me in my younger days there, but that's the second thing that we will do. We'll actually post about a 1-minute video, introduction from the instructor at the beginning of every course. And what that does is that creates a sense of knowing the instructor. You know what they look like, you've heard them, they've given you a little bit of information about themselves and where to find the information in the course content, where their contact information is. If they don't give it on the screen, you can give it there, or you could tell them to go look in the instructor information in the course content, find out more information about how to contact you. And it creates an opportunity for the apprentice to feel like they're part of a group and that they know who you are. Improving faculty interactions. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you react not only just in discussion boards. Lots of us have taken online courses where all you did was get an email from an instructor, or maybe you saw them in a discussion post. You know nothing more about them than that. Any opportunity you have to interact with the apprentices, could be email, could be online chats, could be maybe even over the phone if they have a question. You could have an office time where they could phone in, or apprentices don't always learn online, typical classroom time. So maybe have some evenings or some weekend time available that you could answer questions if they have questions. Also, it's important for faculty to track progress of students and have interactions. So if you notice somebody that hasn't been on the system for a week or a couple of days and they should be working on something, pick up the phone and talk to them, or send them an email and just say, I've noticed that you haven't been on. Is there anything I can do to help? Maybe they're having computer difficulties, or maybe they're called back to work because of emergency situations and haven't had time to do their coursework. You have to be very flexible with this, with the apprentices during this time. Next type of interaction is interaction with content. So the apprentice with the content. That happens on a typical day-to-day. They're going through their course, you're presenting in a face-to-face situation. In an online situation, they can still read their content, they can do that. Make sure that the old traditional way that we used to just take all your content, throw it into an online course, and that's it. So in other words, it's just a text dump where they read page after page after page of text, scrolling down sometimes. Though that activity doesn't create an interactive, engaging activity. To make them interactive, exciting, engaging, and create an exploring atmosphere where they can go and explore content and find information and share that with others, you have to design that into the program. Make them use search tools, make them use some of the online tools to find out more information. So what you do is create a learning environment where they actually start to build a lifelong learning skills that they're going to use in the future. Make it media rich. Use lots of pictures, images, and video. That little video button, what we do in the courses, we actually use that actual button, and anytime we put a video, if they see that video button, they know that there's a link or a video that they can watch. Lots of them will find, they'll watch one, then we'll find 2 or 3 on the same topic area. Try to make it so they don't have to scroll through courses. So if you have your content, one of my best practices is I don't make them scroll down through content. A lot of the learning management systems track when a student or an apprentice goes on a page. It makes a mark or them check in the corner that they've been there. If they read the first paragraph or 2, it gives them that little check mark, and they may not know that that page is 7 pages long because when you built it, you have them scroll. You wanted them to scroll all the way through. You're better off to break off that content in pages so they just do next page. It's easier for them to track where they are. It's easier for you to see what they've read or where they've been. Make sure that your material is up to date and it's relevant. So things that you have, also follow copyright rules. Make sure that all the content you put into a course is safe to put there and that's been approved by either your copyright people or you've done the photos or the illustrations yourself. Interactive self-assessments. Create opportunities where the apprentices can interact with the content. So just reading content all day, like reading a book or reading content, after a while they can get to thinking about other things, especially during stressful times like we're in now. So what you do is every once in a while, put a little self-assessment and try to stay away from just the multiple choice, true and false, fill in the blanks. Try to come up with some innovative ways. Like this is a drag and drop that I'm showing you on the screen right now. They actually click on the boxes on the right-hand side and they drag them over and drop them in under the electrical source in this one on the left-hand side. And as they drop them in at the bottom, they just stick in there. And as they click on the bottom, and it'll show them which ones they got right and which ones they didn't. They can try that over and over and over until they get it right. One of the things it does is reinforces the content that they hopefully just studied in the course or in the text or the manual, whatever you're using. And now you've given them an opportunity to reinforce that what they've learned, they actually know. There's lots of other things. Try to use games. There's games, there's Hoots, as well as the self-assessment. That's just to name a few. That creates an interactive learning experience where they get to sort of self-test themselves out. Course content application. By the way, you'll only see a few places where I put bullets, and this is the second one. I think there's one more slide, so sorry about that. That's sort of against the way I do things, but I needed to put a few points in there for you. Case studies promote critical thinking, and that's one of the essential skills that apprentices need nowadays more than ever. If you have a situation where you can give them you can spell out a situation. It could be a work-based situation. It could be a community situation. Do that in a short paragraph or 2, and then pose 3 or 4 or 5 questions that would create an atmosphere where they would think about that situation and come up with some marks or some remarks that they could post. What we always do is we're not looking for people to do essays. We're looking for short, in a conversation in a workplace. If somebody poses a situation, asks for your input, you're not going to give them an hour-long lecture. You're going to give them a 3 to 4 to 5 minute discussion or some comments that you would think. And that's exactly the same thing you want to replicate in your case studies. You want short answers, you want restricted lengths of discussion, and then you want some method of having an interaction. So if you post in a case study in a discussion post, what happens is their answers now can be seen by the other students, might say, oh, I never thought of it that way. I didn't realize that we could try that. That would be a better way than I thought. So they get to learn from each other. The reason I put rubric to mark here was I always like to show an apprentice how I'm going to mark them on something. So it's not a guess like, oh, I got 80, why did I get 80? The next example here of the rubric is just an example, but what it does is they can look at this ahead of time. They can look and say, oh, here's where I'm going to get marks. Here's where I might lose marks. And it's fairly well defined. What it does, it takes the subjectivity out of the marking. In most learning management systems, you can set your rubric up and you can click on the box. So what the instructor does when he marks, he just clicks on the box. For 6 points, you click on the 6-point box. And you can also put some feedback in there. You can have automatic feedback, or you can put personal feedback to the student, or letting them know, what did they miss, or what could they have done different, or maybe they did nothing wrong and then they come up with something new and different that you hadn't thought of. It opens the door for the instructor to learn a lot about different ways of thinking too, so it doesn't restrict it to just the way that they would normally do it. The next type of interaction, this one's kind of exciting because this one doesn't usually happen in a face-to-face setting, but it does, and it can happen in an online setting. And what this is you can pose questions, and I'll show you an example here in a minute. You can pose questions to the apprentice in an online course that allows them to go and ask those questions to either their supervising journey person or another apprentice they're working with or their employer, and they can ask some of these questions. I'll show you an example. What it does, this does two things. It keeps the apprentice content tied to what they do at work. The second thing it does, the feedback from the apprentice and from industry that we get actually helps the instructor or the faculty of the program keep current with some of the practices that are going on out in the apprenticeship, so that what we're teaching now becomes more relevant, so we can adapt our materials to suit what's happening in the workplace. Especially today, there's a rapidly changing workplace out there. In order to stay current on that, you either have to be working in it or you have to be tied to it somehow. And this interaction allows you to be tied to that as a faculty member. We call them at your workplaces. This one happens to be from plumbing or pipe fitting. And so what we do is we pose a question as a discussion, and we pose multiple questions that they would go and find out from where they're working. So it creates an atmosphere in the workplace where the employer or the supervising journey person realizes that they're taking a course. They ask questions, they have that discussion, and then they get to share that discussion back in a post for the other students and for faculty to read. What it does is, especially in the way Canada is so widespread, it gives an opportunity to share, even within your community, it gives an opportunity to share different things that might happen in different workplaces that might be different than what you would do. So it gives that variety that you would learn from somebody else. You would see better ways or different ways of doing things. It's a great practice, and if you're not doing it, I suggest definitely add, if you have an opportunity to add this into your workplace. It's a great opportunity. This next one doesn't quite work out the same online when I'm doing a PDF file, because the hospital you see on the left-hand side, that's actually a 3D image. And in a course, if you have a 3D image or you have some images that you create, the student can grab that a process or an item or an object. It can actually grab that with their mouse. They can spin it around. They can turn it upside down. They can look at it from different directions. Anything you can do like that to engage an apprentice in the content will help. First of all, it's a fresh new way of looking at things instead of just a picture. It gives them an opportunity to explore, and that opportunity to explore. Sorry, my phone rang. An opportunity to explore gives them a chance to look at the content, become more engaged, and then at the end you can actually have communication about how did that work, what could we do different. Next area I want to talk about, which is probably the biggest part once you have your interactions happening, is that creating a sense of community. Online community, you have to really be sensitive that you post things, that you do things that create an opportunity for students to interact. They need to feel connected. The more they feel connected and part of the community, the safer the learning environment is for them. Some of the projects that I've worked on, the greater the community of the apprentices, the better they felt about the experience and the more they learned from the experience. So we're going to talk a little bit about creating some opportunity in community. One of the things is have discussions. You can break them into small groups where they can work in a small group if that's something that works in the course area that you're teaching. Have them get together in a big group. You can use other tools, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, like face-to-face opportunities, like using webinars, or you can use meetings or something where you can actually see each other and have those discussions live. Especially today, everybody using the word Zoom, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, there's lots of software and opportunities for people to become connected over the internet. You need somewhere to store your materials. There was a time when we used to for online learning or distance learning, we used to send out a package of materials, and the only thing that was online was maybe the syllabus or the course outline was online, and possibly you would post some of your assignments online. Now, the learning management systems today, they have lots of opportunity and lots of tools to allow you to have engagement with the students, students have engagement with other students. You can create opportunities where communication can happen quite easily. Those things are integrated into the new learning management system. These are just a few. Saskatchewan Polytechnic uses Desire to Learn, D2L, or Brightspace is the platform that we use. Some of you might use Moodle or Blackboard or some of the other ones that you see here. They all have similar tools. So whichever one your system has, just be familiar with the tools that are in it. Learn how to build your courses in there. And once your content and course in there, make sure you know how to deliver that to the apprentices so that it's a meaningful engagement. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the tools that are these are some of the common tools that you would see in most learning management systems. They usually have a virtual classroom where you can actually meet. Sometimes it's just audio. Sometimes it's with slide presentations like we're doing today. Sometimes it's actually face-to-face. They can turn their videos on and they can actually see each other, talk to each other. You can have that type of interaction. There's always an opportunity to have discussions in the course, so they can have monitored discussions. They can have chat rooms where they can get together and talk. There's meeting rooms, so you can break them apart and put 2 or 3 or 4 in a meeting room. They can then present back to the main group in a discussion forum or in a virtual classroom. And there's usually some method of submitting assignments, like a Dropbox or somewhere that they can submit assignments that wouldn't be to the other students. It would just be between the faculty and the apprentice. So there's a method of having, especially marked assignments, you may not want those posted. You may want some comments posted, but you may want to have the actual assignment so you can critique it. You can give them some input and you can give them some feedback. And that could be done quite easily in a Dropbox. On the right-hand side, some of the other tools that are available are things like Zoom. I just random picked some. Zoom, Blue Jeans, those are sort of communication tools where you can have multiple people in a room. They talk back and forth. You can do presentations. You can share screens. You can have discussions. You can have text discussions at the same time. Kaltura, the second one there, is actually a media platform where you can store media, you can produce media, you can do screen capture, you can if you're doing a presentation, you can actually capture that and send it out to your students. GoToMeeting and BigMarker are, a lot of these do multiple things. BigMarker that we're using today is designed for webinars, so it's a big webinar program that actually can allow lots of people. I think the setting on this one was 500 today, but it can allow lots of people. Doesn't create that interaction the same. It can if you go to the video side of it, but when you have a lot of people in a conference or a lot of people in a webinar, it's difficult to have that conversation other than maybe using the chat feature like Cecilia said in the beginning. Having everybody talk at the same time, and especially having everybody's mic turned on, can cause a lot of hassle. So you want to look at what tool you're using and come up with some best practices on how to use it. Let me just talk for a second, and I know this is a big thing. Lots of times we talk about, and you hear these words, asynchronous and synchronous. Asynchronous is when the apprentice works on the content or in the course at their own speed, whenever they want during the day or the weekend, and they can move through the content, they can do assessments, they can do all those things. Synchronous is when you actually have face-to-face time, or you have time where you're all doing the same thing at the same time. When you're doing synchronous, you have to plan that ahead of time. You have to have the tools available. And you have to realize that sometimes if somebody's working or maybe away, they can't, although we're probably not away nowadays, but if they're not able to get to a computer where they can do it, they may miss your synchronous time. So if you do synchronous things, it's always good to record those so that you can share. They can share those after, or they can review them after if they happen to want to watch something again. Now on security, and this is especially important today because we don't see the students when they're writing, or we don't see them the same. On the left, the lockdown browser. Most programs have, we happen to be using a program called Respondus. It works with Brightspace or D2L, and what it does, it allows us to lock the monitor. So if the student's going to do an exam, there's a password that's normally entered by the instructor if they're in an on-campus situation. When they're off-campus or remote, what we can do is we can actually have it so that once they start that exam, that browser locks it so that they can't go and search the internet, or they can't use any tools that we don't let them. So if we wanted them to use a calculator, we would have to allow access to calculator. But if other than that, if I don't give access to anything, the minute they start the exam, it locks their screen. And if they have multiple screens, it blanks the other screens, and they're only allowed to work on the questions. If they leave the exam, they have to submit it to leave it. The other one that's on the right-hand side, it's a monitoring feature that's available through, and we use this, is called Monitor from Respondus. What it does is, at the beginning of an exam or an assessment that we want to make sure that the student or the apprentice that's doing it is the actual one, is it actually asks them if they have to have a camera and they have to have a microphone on their system. It'll then ask them to look into the camera, and they click and they take a picture of their face. They hold up their photo ID, it clicks and takes a picture of that. Once the exam starts, it gives them all the instructions, it asks them for their permission, and then once the exam starts, the camera's live and their microphone's live. So you can hear, so when they're in the exam, if they're talking to someone else, it flags that for you. It actually records the entire exam process or the assessment process. And while it's doing it, it's flagging anything that's, so if they turn their head to the side, if they get up from their chair, if they talk to somebody, if they pick up a phone, if they do any of those things, what happens is there's a flag on the system, and you can go back and watch the video. It may make a difference to whether they receive a passing or a failing grade, just because if they were using textbooks and they weren't supposed to, and they knew that, then that would show on when you do their grading or when you do their evaluation and assessment or feedback to them. It gives you proof, and it gives you video proof that's stored. So if you need that to make sure that it's the right person doing the exam and they did it the way they were supposed to, and then you have that security. Well, here's one of the exciting areas that I'm thinking about these days. We can deliver online theory. We've delivered that for years, and most people at most colleges and campuses across Canada and the world have some method of delivering online training. What we always say is, in the trades, it won't work, and I've heard it for years. It won't work because how do you do practical applications? We have to be in the shop for that. Well, we learned during this pandemic one thing. First of all, yes, we can deliver online training and we can deliver content in, I would say, every trade, maybe every occupation. The hard part is, or the more difficult part is how are we going to come up with ideas where a student or an apprentice out there could show us that they can do the practical side or they can learn the practical side. Well, first of all, if an apprentice is in the workplace, they'll have a supervising journey person that looks, after them or mentors them. What they can do, and we've used this in the past, and maybe even nowadays, it's more critical to use, is they all have phones and they have cameras on their phones. All you have to do is if somebody's doing something that you need to see, ask them, could you video that for me and just throw it in a Dropbox or get it to me somehow through email, or it depends how big it is, send it to me, and then I can actually watch the interaction that's happening in the workplace. So you're demonstrating something and they can prove that they did it, and they're also getting some assistance from their mentor, who's also saying, oh, here's some ways you can do it, and they're getting that instruction that they would normally get in your shop on your campus. They're getting it out in their workplace now. It creates an interaction between their mentor. It helps them learn at work, which is what they're going to do. Once they're done your apprenticeship training, their learning doesn't stop. They're going to continue to learn. And all this does is it creates the environment where they can actually start to learn while they're an apprentice in the workplace. And they also can learn from home. So they can go home at the end of the day, review the content. If they know they're doing something tomorrow, they can review that content, and then tomorrow they can do that demonstration at work. I know I've been talking for about half an hour, so I promise I'll keep it short here. There are also people that have their red seal endorsed already, so they're RSE, but they don't want to stop their learning. If you look, SAS Poly, I'm just showing a demonstration of what we have. Blue Seal, which is 550 hours worth of training, so they're 30-hour courses. There's 10 of them. And what you can do is after you're done your Red Seal, if you want to continue your education so that you'll learn about leadership and you'll learn maybe how to be a better mentor or better coach to the apprentices that you're going to train in the future, there's courses available. So don't stop your learning at the end of your Red Seal. What we encourage is take some other leadership things. Learn how to be a better supervisor, learn how to be a better mentor, learn how to be a better leader, because nowadays we need those skills in the workplace. We need people to have those skills so that they can continue either moving up within their company or using those skills to work with apprentices. In conclusion, this is the beginning of a learning road that's going to continue on. The more things that we can learn to adapt and the more high tech that we get, the more innovative that we get, the better it's going to be for an apprentice and for faculty. Questions?
Thank you so much, Dalton. There's been a lot of really great questions that have come in. I've put a few of them in the published section of our Q&A screen. One of the first questions that I wanted to start with was, which apprenticeship programs and courses is SAS Polytech currently delivering online?
Oh, great question. Well, my area, I was in the parts, I was program head of the parts area before. So parts apprenticeship is done, all levels are done. We're doing electrical, we're doing heavy equipment, we're doing truck and transport, we're doing plumbing, we're doing carpentry, we're doing agriculture equipment technician, we're doing auto body, we're doing construction management, which is a degree program, and architectural design. I think I probably missed some, but they're all being offered in some method online.
Fantastic. Another question is, have you received any feedback from industry regarding the online training of their specific apprentices?
Yes, actually, I worked on a few projects. A few years ago, we worked with Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, quite familiar with the FIAT project, which was Flexibility and Innovation in Apprenticeship Technical Training, where we did some of their training online before they would come into school. We got positive feedback across the board from employers, from apprentices, even from faculty, that it was a new and innovative way to deliver training. It keeps them away. They're not so long away from work. They're staying in their community for longer. So it's all around. We heard positive feedback from everybody.
Fantastic. Can you give a practical, an example or a scenario of an apprentice video practical application? So when the apprentices are sending you those videos.
Sure, I can give you one that actually I did. We were running a forklift or a power mobile equipment course. There was a person for some reasons couldn't come to the actual driving part, but needed the certification. So what we did was I set it up with them. They had to drive for 8 hours. So what they set up was they actually videoed, another person set up a tripod. I sent them all the things they had to do. So all the driving they had to do, all the startup procedures, all the pre-shift inspections that had to be witnessed by the faculty. And I sent it to them. And what that person did was they went through and did each one of those online. So for 8 hours, they ran video of all the things they did. And they sent us that video. Then we watched that video to see that they had done all those things that we had asked properly, and then we had a discussion back and forth. That was an extreme one. Normally, you wouldn't want to watch 8 hours of somebody driving a forklift video, but it did work, and it was successful. So you could do a little short. If somebody had to demonstrate a weld, you could have them demonstrate the weld. They could hold it up. They could show you all the settings that they did on the welder, and then it would be a real live example of them actually doing it just like they would in the classroom or in the shop.
Awesome. So another question that might be particularly pertinent right now with everybody at home is how do you proctor an exam when the internet access is not always the most reliable?
That's a really good question, because we rely so much on our internet and our high-speed internet to do a lot of these things, like to run some of the programs like Respondus, Lockdown Browser. If something happened, by the way, if you're running, and I know of some other ones, but if you're running Respondus, and let's say there's a break in the internet and they lose, it's because that was being recorded. You can see that wasn't something the student did. They didn't leave the exam, and you can reset so they go back in there and finish off the exam. So it makes it a little bit more difficult if the internet isn't reliable, but it can be done. I mean, especially with social distancing, invigilation by a person is a little bit more difficult, but there would be some opportunities. If they were at work already, maybe they could go into the office and do their exam in a proctored situation where somebody would enter the password in for them, and they wouldn't have to be right by them, but they'd be in the same room with them.
Okay. Another question we had about the videos sending in for practical application was, what happens if an apprentice has been laid off and don't have access to the same materials or tools that they might need to send that practical video?
Good point, and that especially now with a lot of the businesses closed, that might be something where they'll have to continue with their online. They can keep moving through the theory, and then once they have opportunities to get, so it may stretch the training out where they would have done normally in 8 weeks. It might stretch it out to 3 or 4 or 5 months, because they might have to go through all their theory first and then go back and show us their practical applications at a later date. I mean, hopefully the schools are back open again and they can actually come and do their practical. If they've done all the theory, they'd only have to come and do their practical application in their shop. But that is a challenge with businesses being shut down.
Fantastic. I'm just going to do a quick scroll and see if there's one more question we can ask. And then we'll, just in respect of everybody's time, we do have about 500 people here. We'll wrap it up and follow up via email with everybody. So another one of the great questions asked was, what is the time frame for the online apprenticeship classes that are being offered?
That's a really good question. I'll give you the example from the parts area that I came from. We used to do 8-week training blocks, just like most apprenticeship, where they come on for 8 weeks. What we did was we stretched that out from 8 weeks to 8 months, so they actually could start in September. And because they're working while they're learning, we stretched that out so that they have to be done by May. So they have the whole year to do their apprenticeship training block. You wouldn't have to do it that long. In one of the projects I did, we did 2 weeks of upfront training online. We give them 3-month window to do that. The reason you give them a longer time period is they have, it's phenomenal what you see is they have that time to go through the content. They can review it, they can learn it, they can watch the videos again, they can have those interactions again, they can have those discussions. What you'll find is that learning that they would normally do in a afternoon session in a classroom, they'll spread that out over a month, and the content now becomes real and it also becomes relevant. So they actually learn it, they can watch it again and again. Really good opportunity for somebody that has any type of learning disability, or that's maybe an area that they struggle in with reading or some other things. They can actually spend time in the content outside of the classroom.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dalton, for spending an hour with us today, sharing some of your experiences and best practices with the apprenticeship community. In closing, I wanted to share with everybody here today that the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum has dedicated the homepage of our website to resources that would be helpful to the apprenticeship community through the COVID-19 crisis. If you have something specifically you'd like to see or like to share on the website, please email me directly at Cecilia, CECILIA, at CAF-FCA.org. I will be updating that regularly and hoping to put as much resources on there as we can to support the community. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This has been one of our most popular web events, and in response to this, I've created a quick survey for apprenticeship trainers and educators to help us understand how CAF can best support you through this pandemic. If you have a couple of seconds, I would really appreciate some of your feedback to let us know how we can support you through this crisis. I'm also happy to share with everybody that we will be sharing a recording of today's presentation with all of our registrants and CAF members, so please keep an eye on your email for that later on this week. Thank you again to CAF champion member Saskatchewan Polytechnic and Dalton for joining us today. I hope everybody stays well, healthy, and safe. We'll look forward to connecting again soon. Have a great day, everybody.